Well, welcome everyone. Welcome Barbara Warren. Barbara Warren is the superintendent of the Pine Bluff School District. Thank you for coming in today. I know you're busy. I know you even have people in town, and you probably could have filled your day without doing this, but thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
This has been a windy road. And for the benefit of our listeners, our viewers, take us back to the beginning. How you got where we are, how you got the Pine Bluff School District, the Dollarway School District, got to where we are today.
Okay. Going back, as you said, the Dollarway School District was put under state authority in December of 2015. I was then the director of Arkansas River Education Service Cooperative. So not new to serving the districts in this area and actually in Grant and Arkansas counties as well. So at that time, Secretary Key approached me about becoming the lead at Dollarway. And I did accept that opportunity. This is home. And so December 2015, I was appointed there. Dollarway would make some great strides toward the exit criteria. We struggled still fiscally as we had a spiral financially as you consider moving from, a little under 2,000 students to roughly around 900 students by the time we ended. So while we were making some good decisions in respect to the fiscal integrity, and those were some challenges in the district then in Dollarway. We'd made great strides, but you still can't print money. So there were still challenges in that respect. And we fell short related to the exit criteria. The conversation around the Pine Bluff School District would take place as the consideration around what to do next with Dollarway. And Secretary Key approached me, again, related to the Pine Bluff School District. And so appointed me after Dr. Owa, who was in place as a superintendent, went on to take another role.
He was already working in the capacity of the state's representative running Pine Bluff.
Yes, he was a state-appointed superintendent as well. Okay. And so when he made a transition out of the district, then Secretary Key reached out to me, and I said yes.
Could you see the handwriting on the wall at that point?
To be honest with you, no. I definitely know with the conversations here in our community around looking at merging. Everybody was using the terms consolidation, of course. So I know there was some community push for that consideration. What I've experienced is that the department, or DESE, as you may say, has looked at each of the districts individually. So of course it got closer, and you could see that some decisions were going to need to be made. But
Dollarway's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to happen.
Yeah, I guess could they have put Dollarway? I guess they could have put Dollarway with Watson Chapel, although geographically that would not have made sense.
There are a variety of considerations, and I think you make a very good point in respect to geographically. When you think about the then Dollarway School District covering 400 plus square miles, as deep as the Tucker area,
right. Everything over the river.
Absolutely. So you are talking about creating some challenges that I think the change actually tried to reduce the impact of. So yes, geographic, as well as perhaps some other factors as well.
When they closed Altimer and moved it to Dollarway, Plumas did a story about that, and that just really crushed that community. Have they just thrown up their hands now? It's like, is there anybody left that comes over from that part of the?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. No, I would say the Altimer community is a fighting community. It did have a major impact, though, that the school district essentially over the years left in some respects, but those students were still being served by the Dollarway School District, and we definitely still have at least a couple of hundred students from Altimer even now. So
Really, 200?
Little under.
Well, Altimer and...
Absolutely, and those surrounding areas in that area as you, again, go all the way down the highway. But no, Altimer is a little fighting community. They're faith-based. Community partners are very, very strong, and a lot of other services are still there when it comes to social services and the like. It definitely, though, had a major impact.
Before we started taping this, you and I were talking about the school district across the river, or my experience, and back in the 80s, there were several school districts over there, and they just kept getting smaller. I mean, the closing and consolidating, and then it was Wabaseka and Altimer, and then it was just Altimer. So it is, that's a huge area over there that it draws from. Do you have to send buses to pick up every last child?
Everyone. I don't remember the name of the street exactly, but in the Rob Roy area, some people will be familiar.
Yeah.
We had a child, 1 year in that area. And yes, you have to go and pick up everyone. Not only is it a hardship, just even locally, sometimes for families to get their children to school, and we're happy to have the privilege of going to get them, but most definitely when you add to it, not just 12 or 13 miles, but maybe 18 or 19 miles, when you go as deep as that, families need that support still, and we do. We go get everyone.
You mentioned that the district had, Dollarway had gone from a couple of thousand to 900. What happened to those students? Did they go to, or because the district was under state supervision, did that allow them to peel off and go to other districts? Or because we have just lost population in Pine Bluff, had they just gone elsewhere? Families just moved elsewhere?
Several factors. You mentioned a lot of them. I don't know that people are as clear about the number of families who are leaving our state and leaving our county altogether. So vast numbers actually just leave the area completely. And then we, of course,
moved to Little Rock,
moved to Texas, just move a variety of places for the opportunities, because when schools leave, oftentimes industry either dwindles, or perhaps it's difficult to, not perhaps, definitely, it's difficult to attract. So you have those factors, and families they've got to support their families and make a living. Then you have the choice pieces that have come into play. So you have other schools that are entering into attended zones, and they in fact are also drawing from those very same students. And then when you see growth just 5-10 miles away, let's say with our sister community, Whitehall, families gravitate. So I don't know that I would say state authority per se. Even in the Dollarway setting and in the Pine Bluff setting, community members actually were asking for the department to intervene in some way. So I don't know if it's necessarily just that, but families want to feel like they're sending their children to the best schools. They want to be in places where they can make a living. And when presented with choices, families make choices.
Okay. Put a number for viewers. Put a number. I mean, when you think about, we had, a few students that did, the enrollment drop. Those numbers add up to lots and lots of revenue very quickly. Can you put a number on that and just give people an idea of the enormous amount of revenue that has been lost because of that dropping enrollment?
Yes, let me put it this way. In a round number, $7,200 per scholar. And that again is just a round number. Not only is that a loss per student that year, but every year thereafter, when you still have the same facilities potentially, until of course maybe you sell some, same facilities, and a lot of decisions to make around staffing. So we're talking about millions of dollars when you compare, let's say, a few years to current years. And that is, again, a number that exponentially just grows in respect to the loss.
It's, I would imagine it's hard to keep the budget current and relevant when the ground is always falling out from under you.
In the spring, families have until May 1 to submit choice applications. And so that means that as late as that, you are learning about whether families have an intent to go out of the district. And when you have charters who they may choose to go to, they actually don't have to submit a choice application. So you're finding that out as the
Day
school
one.
year starts.
Oh,
Yes,
Bobby is
absolutely.
not coming here. He's
Yes.
going to the charter school.
And 10 days in, we received a request for records, and that's how we know that child that we had enrolled would not be going. So it is definitely
Have you complained about
fluid.
that?
Hadn't been happy. I've made some comments. So yes, I must say that I have. You've got laws though that are in place, and we all have to abide by them. But we're impacted in great ways by some of the legislation, some of the rules, and some of the regs that we have to abide by. But yes, it's very difficult to budget, but you make the best decisions you can. And again, you know the choice numbers in respect to that intent, and you learn about the charter numbers a little bit later, but you estimate based on the trends. And so that's how you work that. And you try to keep an eye on attrition, you know, as you think about whether teachers are retiring or leaving for some reason, whether you actually need to fill that position or not. You make those types of decisions.
That seems like an impossible task because you've already signed a contract with that teacher or those teachers. And if it turns up that you don't need them, well, you're just going to eat that salary. You'll find something for them to do, but you could have saved that money, right?
And when you say, you're exactly right, but when you say don't need them, it's wonderful to have class sizes that are small.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's not the most efficient thing to do fiscally.
Right.
And so that definitely serves you well. It always amazes me, and I was thinking about this even earlier, that we understand when the private sector has certain challenges and they make certain decisions. But sometimes we don't understand that in the public sector. For instance, if we had some private sector retail businesses and they had fewer people walking through the doors and fewer people buying,
just like that.
They roll out. Exactly. And they make certain types of decisions, and everybody understands that.
Right.
When school districts have to make those same types of decisions, I won't say that everyone doesn't understand, but I don't know that people give districts the credit that they deserve when it comes to turning on a dime, sometimes related to all the same conditions that even the private sector has to, but with more restrictions. So yeah, it's challenging.
It's challenging.
And you learn what to do, and you make the best of it, of course. But you're indeed right.
So you mentioned charter schools. Charter schools seem to be here, and there's a lot of support for them from certain segments of the population. Has the presence of a charter school helped or hurt Pine Bluff? Or the Pine Bluff School District, I should say.
I'm going to speak as a superintendent. I'm going to speak also as a mama, as I have two children. One just went off to college, and one is a middle school student. As a superintendent, I say yes. Anytime you divide up your interests, or anytime you position yourself to somehow make rules for one group that you don't have, or deal with another group in a different way, you are going to create some unlevel ground, and it's going to be really difficult to compete. I will say, as a superintendent of the Pine Bluff School District, that it definitely has had a negative impact on us. even before the outcomes that we've seen, even with test data and with some of the fiscal pieces, even before that, charters had come to the community and had kind of started dividing, I would say. We have to play by a different set of rules, and that's not fair. That's not fair to schools, and it's not fair to the children whose families choose public schools every day. And I think that's really a major issue. People don't understand that people are choosing public
Right.
schools every day, and families are making, of course, decisions for their families, their children to go to charters, but thousands of families are still choosing us. Yes, I think it has a negative impact. And I'm going to say, just even as a mom, I want the playing field to be level for my child and for her to have all the benefits that any other child would have, plus have all the same supports from the community. One of the things that I've lamented about, and I'll say this, and it might be a little challenging for some, but we need to see leaders, families, just people throughout our community uplifting and upholding our public schools, just as that might happen for charters. Really, any school. When I hear about the phenomenal things that are going on in charters, I'm happy for children. So don't get me wrong, I want those great things for them. But I just don't want it to be hard for me to provide the same for the children in our public
It
schools.
seems like some people only get excited about charter successes, charter school successes.
Some people, that is true. I will say that I think that's just, those are more public efforts. We do get great support from this community. We get great support from the leaders in this community throughout. And I don't know if it's that maybe the charters are doing a better job of marketing some of that. And perhaps that's the case. And we're working on doing a better job of telling our story too. But I will say some of that happens much more publicly, I think, for charters, and maybe to their credit, than sometimes it does for public schools.
So you mentioned the uneven playing field, and that has been the knock against charter schools, that they don't have to play by the same rules. Give me an example of something that you have to abide by, but they don't.
Well, every child that enrolls that can show that they are a member of our attendance zone is our child. We don't get to select by lottery or have some other process outside of that. And that's the way it should be. Don't get me wrong. Again, not a bad thing. However, it has felt sometimes like some students are more prone to leave and to go to charters than perhaps others. So that's something that is a major difference. And when it comes down to serving some underserved populations like special needs students, if we are in a position where we have a student that comes in and has, certain needs, and we don't have the staff for that really specialized staff, we have to go out and hire. And in some cases, potentially, if they don't have the staff to meet a service,
They being a charter school. Yes.
then they may just not have to provide it.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple of differences.
Okay.
And I don't have sour grapes about what perhaps a charter is able to accomplish. Again, I want great things for all children. By the way, oftentimes we have served or supported those students for several years before they even go over there. So they're still our babies. And oftentimes, because our students sometimes are so transient, they come back, throughout the districts in this area. So I want good things for them wherever they go. However, again, I just want to be able to provide the same without turmoil or challenge.
So a child going to Pine Bluff School District today, can they leave because the district is under state authority? Can they leave and just walk into the Whitehall School District or the Watson Chapel School District or even maybe the Sheridan School District?
So the choice pieces that I was talking about a little earlier, that applies for all districts within our state. There's a timeline for applying to go to another district. And because we are level 5 intensive support,
The
there
door's
are
a little more wide
the
open,
doors
right?
are a little more, that's right, the doors are a little more open, but that application process is still in place.
Okay. So you've got the condition that tanked the Dollarway School District, dropping enrollment. And what was it about the Pine Bluff School District that got Pine Bluff put on the state takeover list?
So the fiscal integrity, as the district is in fiscal distress, and sometimes you have the factor, of course, of declining ending balances, and that was the case also for the district.
Also for Pine Bluff?
Also for Pine Bluff, as well as the as conditions that may jeopardize the fiscal integrity of the district. Both, again, was a case for Dollarway as well as the Pine Bluff School District. So those factors are what placed the Pine Bluff School District under state authority.
Okay. So you've got a failed school district and a failing but ostensibly improving school district, joined at the hip. What faith can the community have that we will see a striving school district rise from those ashes?
I wouldn't use the term failing. I wouldn't use the term failing. By all indications, when it comes down to meeting certain standards and certain criteria, I can't argue that in some of those cases, it doesn't look too good. What I would say, though, is we have pockets of excellence throughout the district. And the challenge for us has been to make those pockets spread out and become not necessarily an anomaly in this area, but the consistent norm, that we're the achieving district of choice, and that is the case, and that every child has that same guaranteed viable opportunity. So that's more how I would characterize it, and what hope our community has. We are still every day, every year, graduating students who go on to do great things throughout the world. Be it any industry, we can tie and show you children who have come through as a product of our school district to go on to have some major accomplishments and to do some great things. I think that's one indicator. As well, I would love for anybody to come to any of our schools to see the wonderful things that are going on every day. We have a situation in our world, in our state, and in our community that I think we got to be really careful about. This is not just about the schools. The schools are a reflection of the community. And it is definitely true, though, that so goes a school. Definitely, it impacts the community. But we don't necessarily have alone a challenge in our schools per se. We have challenges with the readiness of our children when they get to school. And we have a challenge with the ability to recruit and to retain highly qualified educators who will continue to be here, not just kind of train and then go on to the next thing, be it in another community or in another district. In any industry, you have got to have good people. And that's going to mean being able to nurture them and put them in a position where you can compete against other industries who would have that same employee in their care. We've got to be able to pay people. We have got to be able to, again, retain staff members who are capable of doing that work. I'm proud to say that one of the reasons I would say that you could see us striving and rising, like I said, out of the ashes, is I'm very proud that this year our number of leaders who actually shifted or changed in our district was basically just one. We have
Oh, you
principals.
didn't have teachers hitting the exits to go.
Well, I didn't say teachers per se, but I was starting with leaders. Because leadership is a huge indicator of the success of a school. We did have a shift at Pine Bluff High School, and so that principal has gone over to Dollarway High.
Right.
But we did have a person who had been a principal, Ms. Thompson, and who was an assistant principal there at Pine Bluff High. So there was just one change at that level, which is huge and quite a benefit. And when the year started, we were looking at 6 openings in respect to teachers. 3 of them we could
District-wide or high school?
district-wide.
That's not bad.
It's actually huge and super for us. And I think it's an indicator that we are both retaining more of our teachers, but even in light of teachers who are leaving, we're able to recruit teachers as well. And when I say 6, we were able to satisfy 3 of those classrooms with getting some additional support in place. So it ended up being 3 openings. And when talking to my sibling superintendents across the state, that number not only was just great for us because of the trends we've had and struggles we've had,
Right.
but for other districts as well, because we are all in the same thing. So why do I say people should have confidence in our school district? Because one, our school district is also them. Do we have confidence in our community to rise up, to support, and to embrace our school district? I definitely do.
That might be another segment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it might be. Might be, Mr. Tate, might be. But
So if you go across to the city hall and you talk to the police chief and the fire chief, you know, there has been work to raise salaries, but they still say, you know, somebody comes in here, even people with several years of experience,
yes,
go up to North Little Rock, getting paid more, work less. I mean, is that what you're up against? That, you know, teachers come here, get a year or 2 under their belt, and then suddenly they're hot commodities and can go anywhere else and make more money?
we have found that to be. We definitely have. And we have several teachers who, of course, that you would not necessarily believe would stay, who come and set roots and start families and continue. We finding that to be the same, had to work as hard as we can. So keep in mind, you've got fiscal distress, you've got to keep an eye on the budget, several of those components that you raised, and how sometimes it's just sinking sand. Sometimes we still had to do something. So 2 years ago, it was a small raise. It was a $900 raise that we add to our base. And then last year, we added a $2,000 raise to our base, bringing our teacher base salary to $38,900, still above the $36,000 minimum salary as required by our state.
What's your average? Do you know what the average pay is?
It is in the 50s. I'm sorry, I don't have that number for you. It's in the 50s. And part of what brings that number down is the number of teachers who have, you know, less than
Right.
5 years of experience.
Yeah.
But I'm also proud that we were able to use ESSER and ARP funds over the last couple of years to have an attendance incentive in place.
Explain that. I think that's unique. I've not heard.
We, while there's been a lot of conversation about it this year, and legislators have become involved in some of that, on last year, I approached Secretary Key and the Deputy Commissioner, Stacy Smith, who supports us directly. I approached them with using some of those funds to incentivize teachers being face-to-face during COVID as much as possible, because, I mean, we're talking about a pandemic. And that was important. We know to move forward, we really needed to get along those lines. And so they supported what we've called our response to COVID for retention and recruitment piece. And so worked with my retention recruitment coordinator, Ms. McMurray, and some others to develop, again, what we've called an attendance incentive and also a sign-on. So last year, our certified teachers received, if they were in attendance 95% of the school year, a $5,000 attendance incentive. and classified members received a $3,000 incentive. So that looks like and again, incentivizing being there when students are there.
Right.
So it's a 178-day school year.
95% of that.
95% of that is roughly still being able to miss around 9 days, which is a lot, you know. And we had vast majority of our teachers, of course, to meet that
I
standard.
wondered how many actually took you up on that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was significant. You know, we tried.
So
to pay
that was in place last year?
That was in place last year.
Okay.
Before again the conversations this year, and I did ask them to approve it for 2 years,
Okay.
and so last year they did. So we had that extension, but adding to it this year, a signing bonus. And not as much as I'd like it to be, but it's affordable through this fund source. These are restricted funds, and they're going away one day. But a $1,000 signing bonus for not only new teachers who came in, but also for our returning staff. And then making that $600
If you will
for our
just come
classwork.
back to work.
If you'll come back.
Yeah.
And then $600 for our classified staff members. I don't know if I want to make this little plug for classified staff members. When we talk about teacher raises, sometimes that's all we're talking about. And there are a lot of paraprofessionals, bus drivers, a variety of different people who maintenance, a lot of folks that support.
Keep the wheels turning.
Keep the wheels turning.
Yeah.
And if you can't get in a building,
Yeah.
you know, to teach.
Air conditioning.
Absolutely. All the services and supports that need to be in place.
Yeah.
So that's got to be a part of the conversation. For sure, we've got to raise and do everything we can to support teachers, but all the other staff members, we've got to do as much as we can to support them as well.
Yeah, it takes everybody.
It takes
doesn't
them all, absolutely.
So when you first took over these 2 school districts, or the second one, when Dollarway was put with your Pine Bluff district, you made a point of, and the State Department, I think they voiced this as well, is keeping both institutions running sort of separately, at least initially. But my question is, wouldn't it make more sense to put as many of those functions together? I mean, does a joined school district need 2 football teams, for instance, and 2 coaches, and whatever other 2 things we've got going on, 2 high schools, and couldn't you save some money joining those operations as much as possible?
I think that's a fair question. I also think that perhaps some people think we've been operating as one district for longer than we have. So 2 years ago, literally, the Dollarway School District was a separate district and Pine Bluff was a separate district. It's last year that we were one. So the 6 buildings plus the 3, that we were one. And we did capitalize on some great opportunities to combine services, to combine roles, and to reduce staff greatly, and still continue to do that as we go. So on the surface, you are so right. You definitely can save money by reducing supports and services. And I may be a little more sensitive about this than perhaps I should be. I will point out that that it was the state board who deemed it necessary and ordered it to be that the first year, at least the first year, that all of the buildings would be open. So it wasn't a decision that I made.
Right.
It was a decision that was part of the legal order. But having seen what I have seen with the Alzheimer School District, with what I understood and know and have seen just in my life with everybody all down 79 from there, this is not a decision that you make lightly. And if
Because
you're
every mile you put further away from the river is a mile further that they have
absolutely,
to travel.
and other dollars that you lose, opportunity cost, other indirect funds that are connected. So when you impact a community by shifting or moving that particular building, that life source for that area, you're going to lose students. So Are you saving, or are you creating, before you're prepared even for it, some other significant loss?
When you say you'll lose students, you mean parents get frustrated and say, I can't take any more, and they go somewhere else? Is that?
Perhaps, but I'm going to say that you're going to lose the community opportunities in that area. And again, not that Alzheimer is the only example, because there are other examples in our state, but there were other opportunities in the Alzheimer area as it related to industry, and they were able to draw in a retail store, but there were other pieces. There were even some industry, I won't say closures, but reductions in that area. So you're looking at some potential other losses, and then of course, members of the community moving and shifting. So when things die, other things die along with them. I would say that it is exactly what is going to happen one day, of course. We are going to have one Pine Bluff High School, and our enrollment will tell us how many other buildings we need to have. I was a special assistant to Frank Anthony when I worked in the district some time ago.
Right.
And I was there just as some of the shifts from the recent shifts from like the 16 buildings down to the 13 to the 10 took place. And that was not like an overnight process. As well, you're responding sometimes to lagging data, as we alluded to, numbers, budget pieces. So it's just not as simple as saying, hey, we would save money. Yeah, you could in some respects. And even though it's not as obvious, we definitely have saved money, and we are saving and looking for those savings. But we need to do this in a way, if at all possible, where we're as protective as possible, and that doesn't trigger some other losses in the future, or at least makes it where we can mitigate those as much as possible.
What you're saying is these are not bank branches or McDonald's locations, that it's more complicated than just.
It is more complicated, but I will say we even have a bank branch that's no longer on Dollarway Road.
You're right.
There are reasons for that.
Yeah.
So just an example.
What progress has been made in 14 months?
A lot of things have taken place in 14 months. Interesting, I didn't think about it as 14 months before I saw this question at a point. So in 1 year, with only 6-7 months of time, the fiscal maintenance systems and every system of both the Dollarway and the Pine Bluff School District was merged to one system. If that's all we had done, we would have done a huge thing. I mean, we're talking about every employee's record being touched, various factors, even connecting with every vendor that you have, a variety of different things. So not without some hiccups, but that very huge thing took place. I would say we've stabilized leadership in the district, and I alluded to how we have those building principals, but as well, there are also other district leaders who have come, who are in place, and who continue to be in place. That's something. I mentioned the recruitment and retention efforts that we have made as it relates to not only the fiscal pieces, and again, there's still more to do, of course, but with putting in place a dedicated coordinator to support those efforts, and and really trying to lean in to support staff members. We have a few big rocks that we are really working hard to carry and support. We know that reading is important, and we have been supporting our principals with science of reading and getting all of our teachers staffed, and trying to see that we have, through all grade levels and all content areas, a proficient and beyond teacher when it comes down to reading. And so that's been been a pretty heavy lift, to be honest with you, as we started talking about science of reading a few years ago and started kind of legislating it. We realized elementary was definitely really, really plugged in, but secondary, not in the same way. They're content experts. So we have really made some excellent gains in that respect. Principal efficacy, we are working, routing, preparing, and supporting our principals. I would say that student support services, some of the things that we can see more would be, an example, our social workers. We have not just the 2 social workers that we've had in the district in the past, but we have social workers in each building. We're trying to build up our student support services, connecting to students that are underserved, be it homeless or the like, or even our special needs students. I'll even say an excellent accomplishment in that area. We did have some corrective actions that had to be corrected, and we've done so. As a matter of fact, all of them have been alleviated. We would call them CAPs. The corrective action plans have been in place, and we have actually met all of those and are in a position to move forward to some other great programs to support. I want to use this as an example too. We are strengthening our collaborative efforts. So we are in consortium effort with our Education Service Cooperative here, which means that we are saving monies by programs like, let's say, early childhood special education. All of the districts in this area pay into the consortium efforts. The co-op takes care of that for us, and we, connect with them, meet with families and the like, but we're strengthening those efforts to find savings and also increases in the quality of the delivery of those services. And one of the examples of that is Pine Bluff School District in Watson Chapel has connected to develop an Explore Academy. I think that really speaks volume again to our trying to work together and trying to meet needs of students who we're seeing in our data need some other types of support. There are probably other things I could list and share, but we have, I would say, done a lion's share of work under some interesting conditions. And by the way, all of this with a global pandemic to manage as well. So I'm proud of the efforts of our leaders, of our teachers, and our scholars as well. There are other things that could go on the list, but those are some things that I would share today.
And despite all that, you have developed a pretty vocal group of individuals, both inside and outside the school district, that are not happy with the job that you have done. One group went to the state board a month or so ago and said, we wish we had somebody else in this role. What do you say to them?
I definitely think everybody's entitled to their opinion. I don't have enough hours in the day to explain to anybody and to do the job at the same time just how much this takes, how challenging this job is, and why, in fact, I won't say the best person for the job, but definitely a good candidate for the job. I've seen this before. I think even Secretary Key shared with everybody who could see it via live stream when the state board, set the legal order in place. He expressed some really good things about the growth at Dollarway. And if you were there or in it, you could see that, in fact, some great things had happened. I think the fact that some people are putting the demise of the Dollarway School District squarely just on my shoulders is, and I don't even like this word, but actually it's a little unfair. This is the effort of a community. If something doesn't happen as it should, I'm not saying that leaders are not responsible. I'm not saying that I don't play some role as well, but we've got to look at ourselves and we've got to see where were we? I mean, there's some voices that I hear and some communication I receive that prior to my being connected to the Pine Bluff School District, for some of them, I was actually doing a good job, according to them when they would talk with me. But now being affiliated with the Pine Bluff School District, that's not the case so much. And maybe there's reason to feel or to think that, but there are so many factors. And again, in some of those cases, my question is, where were they? You know, even when we were having the challenges we were when the then Dollarway School District was in existence. So I think that everybody has a role when it comes down to supporting schools. Would I say I've done a perfect job? No, I've not. And I don't know that I'd point to anyone and to say that they would. I can appreciate the feedback. I can tell you what I do have a problem with, though. I, one, don't like it when grown people show out in front of kids. And it might have sounded more like Barbara than anybody else, but I don't like that. I think we should model being able to work together as adults before children. That's a huge thing for me. It's a problem for me. So that's a thing. I would say as well is that we can do a whole lot more together than we can apart. And everything doesn't need to be about me. As a matter of fact, I'm a small facet. While I do a whole lot of work, I lead a team. I lead a district. And if we're not careful, we will let whatever feelings or thoughts or maybe even facts and data someone has about me overshadow what's going on in this entire community or among all of our scholars, among all of our learners. So what I would say is, until I'm not in place, then work with me as the leader, and whoever's in place after me, work with them too. So I do appreciate that feedback, and I think I've grown from it. I also appreciate the feedback of so many others who are in support of me and in support of the district. So
maybe in a less public way, but
yeah, in a less public way.
They didn't make it into the newspaper. Perhaps.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I've got a couple more questions.
Yeah.
One, I know we're about out of time, but with the relocation or the replacement of the high school, that became kind of a hornet's nest. Is that an understatement?
Yeah, that's matter of fact, that's when it started for me.
So
prior to that,
you have now sort of just like, okay, when there's a board, you all can decide, and I'm going to stay and finish working on what I was doing before that issue came up. Tell us how that rolled out, and I also want to talk about crime. Because I know you're concerned about crime in that area, but
Absolutely.
Talk to us about, the getting a new high school, where it might go, and the challenges you faced.
Yeah. So well before me, a partnership plan was put in place or application I should say, was put in place for the building of a new high school. Excellent. I was so excited to hear that just as a community member. I felt like that was awesome. And then, of course, since I've been there, that's when the approval came through that had taken place, and that partnership was going to happen with, of course, the Department of Education providing, well over 50% of the funds for that. So fast forward, just as a new leader, fresh set of eyes, and thinking about all of our properties, and maybe unaware of some conversations that had taken place in the past, but I just thought it was a viable option to consider another property that we own. I saw several pros, not to say there aren't any cons, but I saw several pros to building a school where we didn't have the same limit of the footprint of the building and wouldn't be necessarily retrofitting a build to a limited area. As well, I was concerned about definitely crime and just other pieces like that, even to the point of what we would have to do to eliminate the flooding issues that we have even on our existing campus. So presented it as, again, a viable option. Never wanted to make the decision alone. Never, never. I mean, I am a patron of the Pine Bluff School District, paying my taxes there too, but I'm one voice. So I never wanted that to be the case. However, it became, like you say, a hornet's nest, a viable option. And the opportunity to speak to that, we did give community members an opportunity to do so. And several voiced opinions. It's really about logistics. It's really about what I think is just a good way to look at using our resources and to get the most bang for our buck. But yes, as you said, and even as Secretary Key has said as well, this is a decision for the community. And so because we don't have a board in place in some shape, form, or fashion to speak to this or to help do this work, I think it's best that we regroup. And facilities committees happen and look a whole lot different than what we actually had to come. We made a plea for people to come out if they'd like to be a part of the facilities committee. And we had a little help with sharing that and pushing that message out. And it incited, I think, some reaction that did not make our work as productive as it could have been. You know, when you have 160 people to become a part of a committee, it makes that hard to manage.
Right.
So very happy for the interest and the concern and the support. But what I think is best is for us to, let's get this limited local authority board in place. Let's have some community members. I hope the state board is going to be looking at doing that via zone. And we have that representation to work alongside a facilities committee that will help push and move this forward and get the pulse of the community. With that being done, we're listening for the state board and their next steps. And so my work is focused on doing everything we can to forward the Pine Bluff School District and to keep all of those things in place.
Is the Pine Bluff School District a safe place for students to go to school? And I asked that, you know, last week, Watson Chapel had another, it was a hoax, I guess, what they say. And then, but then Pine Bluff had an issue. Are children safe in the Pine Bluff School District? Could somebody walk into the high school with a gun today if they had one and were so am I?
So I don't want to be an alarmist. So yes, students are safe in our district. As safe, or maybe even more safe than they could be in others. I think a student can walk in a vast majority of districts or buildings that don't have the appropriate fencing, that have access points where someone could come into that environment. So I would say yes, as we have seen the crime and other challenges happening around the buildings, but we have not had those type of major incidents inside of our buildings. So to say that it's safe, my child is in our district. Our children are having positive interactions. Our teachers are, yes, they are. And not just the efforts of our leaders and our teachers and our security, but law enforcement in our community is very responsive and helpful and literally are on our sites. Off-duty officers are working as purchase service persons to support us and to fortify our numbers. We do have a security fleet, but we have definitely are needing more, and they are on board. Sheriff's Department, you know, juvenile justice officers, our community supports, and they come out. And we're in the process of building a fence at the Pine Bluff High campus to help us with those perimeter challenges. And we have put in place, or are in the process of completing, remote access for every building throughout our entire district, to make certain that you don't just have ready access anywhere. So I'm going to say we're doing some really good things to promote safety. Okay. Crime outside of our buildings, I know that our leaders are working hard to do everything they can, but that's something that we're going to have to continue to work together on to get some better outcomes for.
One last question. I know when the Pine Bluff School District was taken into state control, I remember the comments from a school board member that says, we only have ourselves to blame for this. And I'm wondering, is Pine Bluff ready for a limited authority board or any kind of board at this moment with so many moving parts?
I say yes. The Pine Bluff School District is definitely ready for limited local authority board. And I say that because, one, it's obvious with the high school that we definitely need the voice of the community and input, and in a formal way. So for sure, I say, one, there's a need for it, but I say ready because, as negative as some of the news has been, it has really made people a lot more aware of the need. And so, and I think that the environment for people who may not have even said, I'm gonna help or I'd be a part, I think some people are more interested in being part of governing and learning more about how to do the work of school business. So yeah, I really do. And I think it's worth noting that the timeline for connecting to a local limited authority board or a community advisory board or those pieces is actually moving a lot faster than I think it has typically. So it's a good thing for this community, and I definitely think that we're ready. But however, it would be my vote that it'd be a limited local authority.
When do we jump from limited authority to real school board?
So that, of course, is a decision of the state board, and in the fall of next year, some decisions have to be made in respect to that. So it could be at that time, depending on, of course, what the outcomes are and how the state board feels. Is that because the
clock is ticking on the 5 years?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you in this conversation. It wasn't so bad, Mr. Tate. I appreciate it.
Take care, sir.